Fabi Powell. Hi, hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me on this beautiful platform that you've created.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for being here. And I feel like you completely embody what I'm talking about with this podcast and just what I'm trying to do. Your story is so incredible. I actually had a friend who she sent me your story, and I was like, this girl is amazing. This whole thing is amazing. And so I was like, I have to get her on the podcast. And I think what I want to do is just kind of have you start at the beginning and just sort of let everybody know how things started for you. And I say to people now, and I'll say it because I'm a big crier, Fabi, so I'm probably going to do it at some point. So I'm going to
It's a
say,
good thing. That's a
I
good
know
thing.
it is, it is. But if I wanted to go ahead and start from the beginning,
Yes. So I can get a little chatty, so I'll try and keep it
it's
short and
okay.
sweet. And thank you for the glowing intro. That is so kind of you to say. I just am a girl living a life with all kinds of different adversity that I've faced, and just really my goal in sharing my story is just to provide hope and some sort of direction to others who are experiencing similar trials in their life, and kind of showing them that there can be light and joy and happiness that coexists with pain and loss and hardships. So that's my goal. I hope that's what your listeners take away from this. But the short version of my long story is I, in my mid 20s, went on a trip to Nashville. I had just started my career. Well, no, I was pretty well into my career as a medical esthetician for a top plastic surgeon back in California, where I'm originally from. And I was at the top of my world. I was self sufficient. I had an amazing clientele base. I was making really good money. I wasn't looking for a relationship by any means, but I was definitely in a place where it could add value to my life if it were the right person. So my girlfriends and I decided to go to Nashville. We'd never been before. We all grew up on country music. So we had an amazing trip. We all fell in love with the city, and God had some other plans for me and introduced me to my who would be my future husband, Josh, who I met at Honky Tonk Central on Broadway in the
I love
middle of the day in Nashville. I was not drinking yet, so
it.
totally sober. Like, the bar was totally empty. It was just one of those things where our worlds collided, and neither of us were ever the same since that day. And when we first met, people asked, like, was it love at first sight? I knew that I had an instant connection to Josh. Like, it's almost as if I like knew him in another lifetime. And I'm sure you've come across people like that where you're like, oh, I feel like my soul knows your soul. Like, the conversation's so easy, you're so comfortable, they feel familiar to you. And it was that more than anything else. And we just had the best time. I was like encouraging him to go after, like, whatever girl you think is out of your league, like, that's the girl you should be talking to. You are so awesome. And I'm like, why am I giving this guy advice? Come to find out, he's like a total ladies man and did not need any advice.
Of
But
course, girl, you're stunning. So of course he's like, I want you, obviously.
you're, you're so sweet. But I just laugh at myself at the fact that I thought like he needed relationship advice. But
Yeah.
fast forward, I mean, I was going back to California the next day. So I'm like, I'm never going to see this guy again, but what a fun time we had together. And it was that next morning, he was checking on us. We had lost a friend the night before. So he was like, did you find your girlfriend? I'm like, yes, thank God we found her. Can't find her ID, but we found her. And we eventually found her ID and got home. But he was texting me like, I can't imagine this being the last time that I ever see you. And I'm thinking like, okay, sure. And that just kind of kick-started this long distance opportunity for us to get to know each other. So we just started FaceTiming all the time, and I got to know him on a much deeper level. And we both realized, like, wow, I've been waiting for somebody like this for so long, and how amazing that we've found someone like that in each other. And what does the next step look like? So I went back out there to go on like a first official date with him and met his family. And then after that trip, like, our love, grew stronger. And he came to California and met my family. And then after that, really short into our relationship, 2 months in, actually, he was diagnosed with synovial sarcoma cancer, which is never a good thing. I mean, a cancer diagnosis is terrifying in and of itself, but specifically sarcoma cancer, it's a pretty grim diagnosis. So that kind of just took our relationship to a really deep level right off the bat. I mean, we were already falling in love with each other. We were already like so excited about what the future might have in store for us. And then this curveball gets thrown our way. And Josh, being the Southern gentleman that he is, he, gave me the out right away and was like, hey, if this doesn't sound like something that you want to sign up for, I would never judge you based off of your decision to stay or leave. Like, this is obviously a big curveball, and I would never expect you to stay, and I would never judge if you decided to leave. And although that was nice, I'm like, I've waited 27 years of my life to find a love like this. And if God gave me any kind of heart, it was a caregiver's heart. And I had been through cancer diagnosis situations pretty recently. My ex-boyfriend, a year and a half before I met Josh, I broke up with him, but right at that time, his mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I kind of rode alongside her somewhat on her journey. So I had an idea of what something like that looked like. And I think that was also a blessing from God to kind of prepare me what was to come. And so naturally, I was like, no way, I'm meant to do this. And I love you. And you deserve to be loved through the hardest days of your life. Like, that's what unconditional love is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I forced myself upon him. No, I told him, you're not getting rid of me that easily, in a short way.
Yeah.
And so that led to me eventually moving to Nashville. So we met in September. I moved to Nashville in March. And I told him, I don't want to put too much pressure on this because you're dealing with a lot. Obviously, I just want you to know that my moving to Nashville is obviously for you, but should this not work out, like, I would stay here anyways. I fell in love with the city. I've been looking for a change in my life. I've been in California for 27 years. And so that helped take the pressure off of him a little bit. And my plan was to get my own place and just see how things go. And of course, I get my own place, and then just a few months later, we move in together, and the love story just, continues in this beautiful direction with some bumps in the road. Of course, it was not all easy. He's 2 years younger than me, so he's 25-year-old trying to figure out how to be a good boyfriend. So, there's some bumps, but at the end of the day, we just continued to fight for each other despite what life was throwing at us. So we spent 2 years together, just truly experiencing this deep, extraordinary love that I think a lot of people don't have the opportunity to experience, especially so early in a relationship. I think the perspective that cancer gifted us is what made our relationship so deep and so meaningful. And I think that's what other people kind of take away from our love story is, on your wedding day, you say these vows in sickness and in health till death do us part. And I don't think people really realize what that looks like. And, fast forward between cancer treatments and surgeries and more surgeries and botched situations and recoveries and wound vacs. And I mean, there was so much mess mixed into our beautiful love story. But on the days where we had good days, we lived the hell out of life. We had a bucket list to visit all the Major League Baseball stadiums. We started that when we first started dating. So if he felt good and we had a free weekend, we would drive to a new stadium. We would do a little road trip, or we eventually started treatment at MD Anderson out of state in Texas. And like, when we were there, we would go to a Houston Astros game to check that off the list, or whatever it may be. We just didn't let time pass us by, if you will. Like, we didn't waste opportunities to make memories and share experiences together. So between all that mess, Josh ended up proposing in May of 2016, which was about a year and a half into our relationship. And he was in remission at that point. And unfortunately, shortly after, we discovered that his cancer had spread to his lungs.
Mm.
And eventually, months later, after we tried the few chemo options that he had left, none of them worked. And so in August, our oncologist had shared with us, um, I want to be brutally honest with you so you guys can make the decisions appropriate for you. And Josh isn't going to make it to your May wedding date of 2017. So you're going to have to move your wedding date up. It wasn't even a question for her. She was just like, you're gonna have to move your wedding date up, not like you can't have your wedding. She
Yeah.
just she gifted us this knowledge that I think so many medical providers are scared to share, because they don't want to steal hope and all of that. But she and I are still really close, and I get emotional talking about it because she gifted us the most amazing day of our lives that I get to look back on and cherish as a core memory for me. And I got to marry the love of my life, which has been my dream since I was a little kid. Oh, and this is the first podcast that I've actually cried on. So
Oh, me too there. I'm here with you, girl.
um, I'm also working with a coach that's helping me move like energy through my body that I've carried with me for so long through
Oh, that's
grief.
huge.
And
Yeah.
this is such a testament to that. We literally had our first call about it last night. And so this is really a huge moment. Aside from that,
Oh,
aside from my story,
I could do a whole separate podcast with you on that if you want.
yeah,
I love
we
that.
need to. We really need to, because it will help so many people. I wish that I would have discovered this person 6 years ago. But all that to say, Josh's oncologist, Dr. Rougeau at MD Anderson, she gifted us with the ability to choose how we wanted to spend the rest of his life. And so we planned our wedding in 2 months, and we ended up getting married on the day that was supposed to be our engagement party, which was November 12th of 2016. And a lot of hard conversations happened between then. Josh was really sick, and his health was declining pretty rapidly around this time. And we talked about, should this cancer take his life, like where he would want to be buried, and what would he want to be wearing, and conversations that people don't have with one another, because you don't have death on the mind all the time, unless you're someone like me who's been through something like this, and you're just so hyper aware of how fleeting our lives are. But we had the most magical wedding, and Josh shared with me actually that same day that our oncologist told us that we didn't have much time left. I had wedding on the mind, and Josh and I sat down outside of that doctor's appointment, and the first thing that he said was, "What about our babies?" And so a lot of people don't know that, luckily, in medicine now, when young patients are diagnosed with cancer, oftentimes, or more often than they used to, they suggest freezing your sperm or your eggs prior to going through chemo and radiation, knowing that it can have a negative impact on you trying to start a family later in life. And so Josh proactively did that, not necessarily for me at that time, we were newly dating, but wanted to be proactive, always wanted to be a dad. And it's always been my dream to be a mom, especially with a person that I would want to have a child just like, And so that took my breath away, because Josh, up to this point, never talked about not being here one day. And so for him to say, "What about our babies?" And then he followed that up with, "How cool would it be to have a little piece of me live on forever? And you would be the most amazing mom." And so to have his blessing at that point, like, of course I didn't know in that moment. I say that, but I mean, of course I wanted to have our children. I always did from the beginning. But to have his blessing was such a gift to me, should I ever decide to actually move forward with this, to know what his wishes were and to know that he trusted me to do this with or without him. And I think that's like, if there are any negative comments that come up about this journey that I'm on currently, it's, that's so selfish to bring a child into this world without a dad. And of course, these people know like a little snippet of my life, and maybe they hear a 30-second version of my story, and people have their opinions. That's just life, right?
Mhm.
But for me, I trusted Josh with everything. Like, he was the voice of reason in our relationship. I'm the dreamer. He's a dreamer too, but he would reel me in. I would trust him to be like, yes. If he says yes, then it's a good idea. And so to have his blessing and to know that he trusted me to raise our kids without him there, with just me, and he was raised by a single mom who we lost in 2020 to cancer as well. And I mean, he's one of the best guys I've ever known, and that's just a testament to, yes, it's easier with two parents, but sometimes it's not always better. And not that I have anything to prove to anybody or trying to like change anybody's opinion. It is what it is. All that matters is that I feel like I can do this, and that the father of our child knows that I could do this. It's just nice knowing what his wishes were. So, all that to say, Josh ended up taking his last breath 31 days after our wedding.
Mhm.
And it took me 4 years to make the decision to actually actively move forward and start IVF to try and create this family that we both dreamed of. And so here we are. I am now heading into my third embryo transfer. I have done 5 egg retrievals, 2 at a clinic in Colorado. I had 2 failed transfers there after those 2 egg retrievals. And then I did 3 egg retrievals with my new clinic, and we have 1 perfectly healthy embryo that we will be transferring on January 25th. So, God willing, this will be the one. The biggest challenge for people who don't understand IVF, it's a very complex process, but what I have the ability to do with the knowledge that I've gained through the passing of my mother-in-law and the passing of Josh is that they're both carriers of the BRCA2 mutation, which is breast cancer gene that is attributed most often to breast cancer, ovarian cancer, prostate cancer, pancreatic cancer, and probably many cancers that we're unaware of.
Mhm.
So knowing that they carry that gene, I can do genetic testing on our embryos to avoid it, which is a beautiful thing to be able to eradicate that from our family. But at the same time, it cuts our odds completely in half.
Yeah.
Because I have, let's say, 5 healthy embryos chromosomally, but they have the cancer mutation. It's a 50-50 chance whether they will or they will not carry it. So anyways, that's what's made my journey a little bit more challenging than most in a situation like this. So that's where we are. Obviously, I can go through all this, you can go through all of this and still not end up with a baby. It's not a guarantee, but for me, I knew that I had to give it my best shot. I'm someone who now in my life, and kind of always, even before losing Josh, my biggest fear in life is regret. I don't think that there's a worse feeling than looking back on your life and wishing that you would have done things different, or wishing that you would have taken an opportunity while you had the chance. This being one of those that you don't have the opportunity forever, right? So again, the short slash long-winded version of my story, and I'm happy to dive deeper into any of those topics, but that's kind of
I
where we're at
have,
right now.
yes. So Fabi, I have a lot of questions because just hearing you go through your story, I guess Well, one thing you said that struck me is you felt like when you found out he had cancer, that it was a gift in a way that was given to you. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Follow I don't even know how, like on my For You page, I think I just get filtered like either cancer patients or widows, people a lot like myself. And it's a common theme that you'll hear cancer survivors or people who have experienced any type of close connection to cancer, that a lot of them will tell you in a weird, twisted way, it's a gift. It's obviously such a curse, but if you look at it for what it is, if it weren't for this, if it weren't for Josh, I wouldn't be the person that is sitting in front of you talking to you today. I wouldn't have the wisdom that I have at 35 years old without having experienced life the way that I have. I wouldn't have had the love story that I had with Josh had cancer not been the curveball that was thrown at us. Now, is it fair? Absolutely not. I mean, I would give anything to not have any of those things happen, but I am grateful for the perspective that it gave us. And with that perspective, allowed us the opportunity to never take one single second that we had together for granted. With that said, I just had lunch with my realtor's daughter yesterday, actually. It feels like 5 days ago. And she's newly engaged to her Josh, and they're actually getting married the same weekend that Josh and I got married.
Oh,
And that's just special in and of itself, right? No coincidences. But at the very end of our coffee date, I was giving her some work advice. And at the very end, she was like, what advice can you give me as a soon to be new wife? And it almost made me cry talking about it. But I just told her, I was like, listen, there's going to be things that drive you absolutely nuts about Josh. And start thinking about what those things are as I'm sharing this with you. She's like, oh my gosh, I could think of the number one thing right now. And I'm like, okay, so picture that thing. And every time he does that thing, just know that if there's ever a day that you have to live on this earth without him, that is going to be at the top of the list of things that you will miss. It's the little things that you take for granted every single day, like being able to wake up next to him, even if he snores like a grizzly bear, and you're like, oh, I'm never going to be able to sleep. You will miss the hell out of that if, God forbid, you ever have to live a day on this earth without him. So just keep that in the back of your mind when you're triggered, or, you get an energy spike because something's getting under your skin about your person. And this goes for anybody in your life. Like, there's things that my parents do that drive me absolutely nuts. But I always think in the back of my mind, like, they're not going to be here forever.
yeah.
Like, you're not perfect either. Think about the most annoying thing that you do and then give them some grace. And I think that perspective is something that I wish I could gift everybody, without having to experience the pain and the loss that I have to gain that wisdom. So in a way, it is a gift if you choose to see it that way.
Right. It is all perspective, right? Depending on how you look at things. And I mean, well, I feel okay. I have so much more to ask you. So, well, and just hearing you talk about, I mean, just so you know, I too, I'm a military spouse. My husband's in the Navy.
I
And so
love
that's,
that.
yeah, that's also why I kind of felt like I could relate to your story a little bit, just, given being a military spouse in and of
Yes,
itself isn't easy, but,
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. And, we got married, when was it? 2021. And, hearing you talk about, right, those things that bother you. And some things came right to the top of my head too, but that's such a great way to put it, that, yeah, those things, you're going to miss those things eventually.
Yeah.
And that
It
kind of like
seems
puts it on its head for me. Yeah.
it seems crazy because you're like, why would I miss that? But what makes them uniquely them. It's not the huge, I mean, of course you miss the big things, but it's those little everyday things that you're like, gosh, I wish he would put his stinky feet on my leg. Like it's so annoying, but I loved like bickering back and forth about those stupid things. Looking back on it, I'm like, I would give anything to have my worst day back with him, just to be in his presence, just to have what we had. And all of that is passion, all of that is love. And I think if people just kind of were able to embrace that perspective before any sort of terminal illness pops up, they would be able to really experience the extraordinary side of love that I think we're meant to experience while we're here. And I think so many of us just are so scared of pain that we just kind of cruise through life and don't take risks and choose not to be our most vulnerable self because pain is involved in that. But I promise you, once you tear those things down and you choose to go after things despite the fear, you choose to do things scared, you will live such a more fulfilled life, and you will be so much more likely to find and understand your purpose in being here.
That's so true. And you know what struck me? And I actually printed out because I loved it. So your email signature, because you were emailing obviously back and forth to arrange the interview, and it says, "Live fully, love fiercely, this all ends." And
Mhm.
that just really struck me. And I think that's kind of what you're saying, right? Is this idea of just presence. And this is all going to
Yes.
come to an end one day, just to be. And that's something I'm working on too myself, is just working on this idea of being present, and
Yes.
appreciating what's in the here and now. And it's so much easier said than done, obviously. But that's definitely, of the many things, that's one thing I will take away from your story for sure.
I'm so glad. And honestly, that's why I plaster that everywhere, because it's so hard to like sum up this life experience and like package it up and gift it to somebody, right? But I feel like that phrase really sums it up. Like, none of us are promised tomorrow, not one single person. And the one thing that we all have in common, every single person on this earth, is we will all experience loss
Hmm.
and grief. And it's still to this day such a taboo topic. And it's still something that we all tiptoe around.
Hmm.
And if there's anything that I can do while I'm here, it's number one, to normalize that, because we're all walking around with bleeding hearts for something, right? And we just think we have time. And
Yeah.
if we don't live fully now, if we don't love fiercely now, we may never get the chance to do so. And that's why at the end of that phrase is, because this all ends, like, don't forget, we're only here for this short time. Like, what do you want to do while you're here? We were, in my opinion, sent here to experience all these different things. Like, we're so lucky to be able to feel things and have these different life experiences. And if you just embrace it and allow it to move through you for what it is, and then allow it to change you and, you know, morph you into this better, more wise version of yourself, so you can then share that with other people. Like, to me, that's just why we were put here, and maybe not everyone agrees on that, but I would never be who I am right now talking to you if I didn't go through all of these things. And although I wish I could change them, I'm also so blessed to have the life that I have right now. And I try not to ever let that get lost on me.
Can I ask, how are you not mad? Are you mad? Are you ever mad?
Oh my gosh, I think that's a very important piece to grief in general. I have to say that the more time that passes and the more layers of grief and loss that get packed on to my heart, IVF being one of those. Every time I've lost a transfer, an embryo, it's losing my husband all over again.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's what's made me the most angry, is like, God, I've been through so many things and I feel like I've done good by finding the silver lining and like trying to use my pain for good, my pain for purpose and help others and make them feel less alone. Like when does it work out? Like when does that happy ending come? And that's what my coach and I were talking about last night, which was so freeing. I have to say, like, I had the biggest weight lifted off of my shoulders. He was like, I think a lot of times we fantasize what things would be if they weren't what they are,
Yeah.
right? So it's so easy for me to look back on my life and be like, why did Josh have to get cancer? Why did Josh have to get stolen from me? Well, he was never meant to be in my life for longer than he was. And I was never meant to stay the person that I was when we were together. And
Mm.
again, if we weren't dealt the cards that we were, we would have never had what we had, which is an extraordinary love that most people will never experience. And so, am I angry? Do I still get mad and cry and think, like, why me? Absolutely. I'm human.
Mhm.
But more often than not, I can look back and be so grateful and truly understand the blessing of what he was in my life. And I get to carry that with me forever. And then looking at my life now, all of the beautiful blessings that are in my life right now, like this opportunity to have this conversation with you wouldn't exist if all of that pain wasn't experienced, right?
Mhm.
So to answer your question, 100%, like my last transfer that failed, my transfer fell on our wedding anniversary.
Oh God.
So I thought, like, there's no way that this isn't it. Like, this is like the biggest sign you could have ever given me. Like, out of
Right. Everything's aligning.
365 days
Yeah.
in a year, like, and nothing ever stays on the original date that you're given either. And
Right.
this just so happened to stay on that date. I thought, like, for sure.
Mm.
And that letdown broke me into a million pieces because I just knew in my heart, like, this is it.
Mhm.
And when it wasn't it, I was just so angry.
Yeah.
And then again, you just kind of what we worked on last night, like trying to kind of uncharge from this expectation and this pressure for this transfer to work that I put on myself, not to mention, allowing hundreds of thousands of people to be on this journey with me. There's just a little pressure. He helped me kind of look at it from a perspective of like what would be the cons of this working out, like what would be that reality. Raising a child on my own, which would be really freaking hard.
Mhm.
Some of these business ventures that I dream of doing, like, would I be able to do them with a brand new baby? We don't know. um and not to take away from, like, this will always be my dream. Do I wish more than anything in this world that this does happen for me? 100%. I would never put myself through what I've been through if that weren't the case. But being realistic about, if this doesn't happen, is your life going to be over forever? And that alone, just kind of looking at those things and weighing out these different scenarios took such a huge weight off, like whatever happens is going to happen regardless of how much pressure I put on myself, no matter how bad I want this, and to be able to like really look at that perspective helped me take so much of the weight that I've been carrying around heading into this transfer, which is so unhealthy for your body and not doing me any favors, was just a gift that I am so grateful for. And I know that not everybody wants to go to that place and even think, like, what if this doesn't happen? But the reality is there's no guarantee that it will. So I have to, for my logical sake, think of what are the positive things that will happen after this if this doesn't work, and what are the amazingly beautiful things that will happen if it does. And just to find some sort of peace in that middle ground of both scenarios. So that's how I kind of manage my anger in a way, is to not let my my blessings, my everyday blessings get lost on me because of the pain that I've experienced, because the pain will always be there. That's the love that I no longer get to share with him, and I wouldn't want to not have that either.
Yeah. And how
So
old are you
sorry.
again, Fabi? 33?
35.
35. Okay. Oh my
And
goodness.
I was 29 when Josh passed away. So we just celebrated 6 years.
Oh, and like I was just gonna say, because I feel like for your age, you are so wise. Because and I'm kind of with you on that. I think, and I don't know if everybody believes. I don't think so, but I sort of believe that, um, it's the lesson. What can we take away from everything, right? When these things happen, that's all we can do is what can we learn from this? What is it that I can take on with me through this lesson? And I think you're just doing such a beautiful job because it's so hard what you're doing, and to be able to take away everything you've taken away, I find you amazing. It's incredible.
Thank you so much. It's such a work in progress. Like I'm telling you, I have made so many realizations over the last 2 months, even, that have catapulted me forward in so many different ways. And part of that was, for so long, I made Josh the center of my world post loss. I started a nonprofit in his honor, which I
Yeah.
still run on the back end. But of course, IVF has taken a front seat to that. And, at one point, I'm like, when am I going to start living my life post loss? Like, who am I? Who am I now that I've experienced this? What can I do with this experience to help others? But how do I find my identity in all of this instead of continuing to live for Josh, which I will never be able to do because I'm not him.
Hmm.
So, it 2 months ago, I made the decision to make myself a priority. And since doing that, I have just grown in such exponential ways. And um, my coach that I'm working with to help me with some of this energy work, and also to lose some of the weight that I've carried with me through my grief and loss and IVF, to shed that has been so much more than just losing weight, like fat off of my body. It's like I'm literally shedding the grief and the pain that I've carried with me inside of my body and not allowed my body to release, which is why I'm crying on your
That's
podcast.
so important though, like you're saying, because that, and energy, it's emotion, right? Like that's what that
Yes.
energy is. And so to get rid of it, I think that's amazing. I think that's huge. Yeah.
It's a common theme. I connect with a lot of people who have lost someone significant, either a spouse or a child. And I think it's a common theme that we literally carry fat, like, on our body, that is almost like a cushion
Hmm.
for this grief and pain. And to finally find a way to get rid of that, not only physically, like it sucks not fitting in your clothes and looking in the mirror and being like, when am I ever going to get back to the old version of me, which you're never going to be the old version of you, but your body shouldn't have to suffer, right? And, then jumping into IVF, and gosh, anybody who's gone through IVF knows that those hormones throw your body totally out of whack and make you gain weight, like significant amount of weight, lose it, gain it again, and you just put yourself in the back seat to everything else. You're like, well, this is more of a priority. This is more of a priority. Well, I'm just focused on having this baby. I'm going to get pregnant and fat anyways, all these excuses. And I'm like, okay, when are you going to put you first? Like, you're dedicated to helping all these people, but like, look in the mirror and help you so that you could help so many more people more effectively and more efficiently when you feel good again. And I just can't push that enough. Like, we all have reasons to not prioritize ourselves, but when we do make the choice to do that, you just will have energy about you, and people will pick up on it. And to truly feel good in your own body, you can't put a price on that. So that's where I'm at. A lot of hard work, specifically in the last 2 months. Obviously, a lot of hard work over the last 6 years, but it's this new, like, I've gotta be the best version of me in order to accomplish these big, wild, and crazy dreams that I have. So that's what
Yeah.
we're doing right now.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I hope you don't think I'm out of line by asking this. If you do, just tell me to shut up. Do you ever
No.
down the line, do you see yourself remarrying or getting married again?
I love this question because the way that I present on social media, I think it's a common misconception that, like, I'm just going to be this widow who talks about Josh for the rest of my life. I actually dated for a few years, like, was actively dating before I decided to start my IVF journey. I wanted to give myself a chance at finding love again, right?
Mhm.
Like, if you've known me for years, the first thing anyone will tell you is, like, she believes in love more than anybody on this planet. And I do. It's just, I love love. It's my favorite thing in the whole wide world. And I would give anything to be able to experience that again. So I did put that first.
Mhm.
And I wanted to give myself an opportunity to open myself up to that happening before making it extra complicated by having my late husband's baby involved, right?
Yeah.
So that was about 2.5 years of dating, and again, great experiences. Never came across somebody that I wanted to date long term, let alone start a family with. So COVID happened, and I think we all kind of or we all had time to, like, take a step back and look
Reassess.
at our
Yeah.
lives.
Mhm.
Yes, absolutely. And see, like, what do I want out of this life? Like, what is most important to me? And that's just when I reevaluated the importance of family. And my sister had just moved to Tennessee, and we are now neighbors. We live 3 minutes down the road, and she has since had a daughter. And so my 17-month-old niece is right down the street, and such a blessing to have her. But in my mind, I was like, I met the person that I was supposed to start a family with. Like, I met the person who I wanted to be the father of my children or child, God willing. I have the opportunity to make that happen potentially. Like, I also have hopefully more time to find love should this not work out, or should this work out. So I think it's time in my life to prioritize the most important thing to me while I have the opportunity to do it. And I don't want to look back and regret. And this is when my mother-in-law was sick. And I was kind of, once I made the decision to move forward, I had long, hard conversations with her, and she was so supportive of my IVF journey, and same with my brother-in-law. So I knew that I was already going to have this tight knit village
Mhm.
that would come alongside me and help raise this miracle baby.
Yeah.
And then together we decided that I would ask for help, so that, which is what started this village. There's no way that I could have gone through 5 egg retrievals on my own. I mean, I am a single family income, and one round of IVF was $26,000. I didn't have hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting in the bank to put towards this. And I just prayed a lot about it. And I asked God, like, if this is the path that I'm supposed to go down, please open the doors to make it possible. And just when I would think, like, there's no way that I could ever do another round, like, a door would swing wide open, another door would swing wide open. Like, this village has made it possible for me to make this dream a reality. And if that tells you anything, it's that you have to do the things that scare you. I mean, I'm such an independent person. To have to ask other people for help is so outside of my comfort zone and so outside of my wheelhouse, but also understanding that I can't do it all alone.
Mhm.
And if it's meant to be, I always say this and it's so cliche, but whatever's meant for you will find a way.
Mhm.
And at very low points in this journey, I'm like, if this is not supposed to be, like, please close these doors. Please give me something so that I know it's time to move in a different direction.
Yep.
And again, that hasn't happened yet. So that's why we're still here where I'm about to go into this third transfer. And what happens on the other side of that, we'll just have to wait and see. And we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Well, Fabi, like you said, I know that so many people are following your journey, and I have friends. I think probably we all in some capacity know somebody who has gone through IVF, or a friend of a friend
Sure.
or whatever. And it's so hard. And so to do it in the way that you're doing it, I can't even imagine. But I think we're all rooting for you. And can we
Thank
maybe like
you.
tentatively schedule like a follow-up interview at
Yes.
some point? Okay. I like need to know what's going on with you. Now I'm very invested. So
100%. This has honestly been such an honor. I've had such a great time talking with you, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my story and hopefully touch some people out there who were meant to hear it. And I would love to reconnect and talk about some other topics, follow up on some of the topics we covered today. But I just wish you the best of luck. This is going to be such an awesome platform.
oh, thank you. And gosh, I wish you the best of luck. I'm so rooting for you and I can't wait to hear what happens. And I think you have a bunch of angels, of course, especially in your husband who are looking
Yes.
out for you. So, um,
Yes, they're
Bobby, I
always
think,
sending me little winks from heaven. So
yes.
if anybody wants to follow along, like Michelle said, my handle on most social media is Fabi Powell, and there's not many of me, I don't think. So you'll probably easily be able to find it. But if you're interested in staying tuned on this journey, I do post a lot of updates there. So thank you again for listening. And I'm just so excited for you in this new venture.
Oh, and I'm excited for you. And yeah, again, and I'll tag you and everything on social so people can see as well. And then for those two who want to follow with the organization, the Josh Powell Foundation, right, is
Yes.
what you started in honor of your husband if people want to look into that more. So
Absolutely. Thank you
awesome.
again for your time.
Bobby, thank you for your time.